I have a special guest here with me today to help demonstrate how to make a baby blanket. It was a question that was posed by someone in the comments on how to put together a baby blanket. And I have a set of baby blankets to do for a set of twins. So stay tuned and we'll take a look at getting baby blankets put together. Now my blanket is already laid out. I actually didn't intend to already be this far ahead in the process. However, I can show you from where it's already pinned together how I started. So with this particular blanket, it's actually a set of blankets. I chose the minky fabric, which this is the minky. It's a very extremely soft pile fabric, and it's a type of fleece. And this is called Comfy Dot. If you go shop Joann's Fabrics and Crafts in your area, they call it Comfy Dot, but it comes in many different colors. Here's a teal. This one is the purple, of course, and then there are many other colors. I've seen red, I've seen black, I've seen navy blue, but this is what I generally use for the baby blankets. And then I usually top it with a solid color fleece of some sort. Generally I'll use white as the top because most of my customers ask for the baby's name and a design, but in this instance it's just the baby's name up at the top. This one is for the girl and this one is for the boy. So what I do is I lay out the fleece first without the minky up under it. Right now the minky is under it, but I'm just going through my initial steps. I lay out the flannel first and I mark the location for the embroidery centered on the blanket. Once I mark the center for the embroidery, I take the top layer of fleece to the embroidery machine and go ahead and put the name Cutaway Stabilizer on the back and embroider the blanket on the right side, of course, of the piece of fleece that's going on top. Then what I do is I bring that top piece back to my cutting table without the minky up under it, just this fleece top. I lay it out on the table nice and flat. I mark my center again for the name, and I take my water soluble marker. Notice again, this one is disappearing ink. The purple side, mark be gone, is the blue. I prefer using the blue because the purple is so dark. On lighter color fabric, sometimes it can have a lingering effect, but you still can spray water on both sides of this color and it will disappear. You may have to spray it, I use a little spritz bottle, and you may have to spritz it more than one time. Let it spritz, you'll see it disappear. After it sets for a little bit, those marks may appear to come back. Just spritz it again and generally it's gone by that time. And I also put a few drops of vinegar in a little spritz bottle. For some reason that vinegar helps get this off even faster. All right, so we're working with just the top layer of fleece. After the embroidery is done, I lay out the top layer of the fleece and I come with my water soluble marker and I take my ruler and I mark out the square of the blanket. So I lay it across the top evenly by using the lines. I love this mat. This is a ruler mat that stretches the entire length of my tables. The size of it is 72 inches by, I want to say 36 inches, by 1 yard. And you can lay out a baby blanket easily or a toddler blanket and measure. And using these guidelines, I mark the lines on the blanket where I'm going to sew. the blanket. That helps me because when I get to the sewing machine, after I pin the top layer to the right side of the minky fabric, after I pin these two layers together evenly all the way around, I don't have to think too hard anymore. I don't have to wonder, well, did I cut this edge of the fabric straight? Is that side straight? It doesn't matter because I've drawn the lines out on the top layer straight, so that's straight. So when I get this to the sewing machine, I'm just going to sew right along this line and right along the line going up the side, and I know I'm sewing straight because I've pinned this straight. Another question that was asked of me is, I mentioned in a prior video on tips and tricks for sewing, that I spray with spray adhesive to hold the blanket together instead of pinning. What I do is I get a can of spray adhesive. Now, I don't particularly care for this. It says it's temporary, it says it's sewable, but when I turn it inside out, there's still like a slight sticky residue. So I don't particularly care for this, but I'll put a link in the description to the one that I prefer to use, but I'm out of it. What I do is I take it. Now, let me take this pin out and that pin out. And on this side of my marked sewing line, I spray it. Just really quick, just like that. Nothing major. And then once that's sprayed and it's smoothed out flat, see, it's not going to move very much once you get this over to the sewing machine. Another tip that I do, because in order to sew this blanket, I take it to the sewing machine. This is the bottom of the blanket, that's the top of the blanket. So I start at the bottom always, because there's nothing worse than to start at the top and say, for instance, you're not able to close it cleanly, or it seats itself and you can see where the blanket has been closed. It's not that big of a deal down at the bottom, whereas up at the top, it's more visible. All right. So I take this to the sewing machine. I start here. So back stitch right here, sew down, pivot on the machine, sew all the way up, pivot at that corner, sew all the way across, pivot on the machine and sew all the way down, pivot on the machine and then sew all the way, and then back to where I stopped. And I try to leave a hand space opening where I start and stop my sewing to help me know where to stop and start. I'll use oftentimes a different color pin to mark where to start and where to stop, because everywhere else on this blanket are yellow headed pins. This pin is yellow, and even my clear glass pin heads is yellow. So while I'm going through sewing, I don't have to think very hard, because what's going to happen is I'm going to come to a blue pin and I'm going to know this is where I'm not supposed to go past. So about a hand space, and I'll put this other pin there so I know I'll start here, in here, and I have plenty of space right in here for my hand to reach in and turn the blanket inside out. So that's how I lay out my blanket and prepare it for sewing. And then once the blanket is sewn like this one and I turn it inside out, there we have a completed, just about completed blanket. Now at this point with my blankets, depending upon the customer and what the customer has ordered, I will top stitch. Either the top stitch, the thread of the top stitch will match this green, or the top stitch will match the blue. It just depends on what the customer wants or how creative I'm feeling at the time. But on this instance, and generally what I do, my top stitching is the same color as the top fabric, and then I'll use hem tape, which I just had a piece somewhere that I was going to show you guys, a piece of hem tape or stitch witchery. I don't know what I did with it. I just had it. And it's white, so I'm sure it's blended in with the top of this thing somewhere. But there's a small piece. Oh, here's my roll, so I'll just tear another piece. And what I generally do is take a piece the size of the opening roughly, okay, and tear it off because it's just that pliable. Stick it in the opening. Make sure that it's going to lay correctly once it's sealed, and then press with the hot iron. And I generally try and press on the top. You don't want to hold it down for a long time because it can leave the imprint of the steam holes from the bottom of the iron. So I lay it for a little bit, count to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, take it off, look at it, smooth it down, check it to see if it's sealed shut. If it's not, another 5 seconds, and I keep doing that until when I do this, that doesn't open up to let me know that the blanket is closed. Then I go and I do the top stitching all the way around the edge of the top of the blanket, and then the blanket will be completed at that point. Click here to subscribe to our channel. Click here to view other videos in our tutorial playlist. And click here for the next video that you should find helpful. Thank you.